Hello, everyone. Welcome to the Killer Author Club. We are so excited that you are here with us. Killer Megan Miranda is in the clubhouse today, and we have another great show in store for you. So grab your cocktail, sit tight, and we will see you on the flip side.
Thought you really loved me, guess I was wrong. Thought you'd never leave me, guess I was dumb. Waited like forever to be your plus one, but I guess you were done. Left me at
Welcome, everyone. And wow, the clubhouse is already filling up. We are so excited that you are here with us. I'm Killer Heather Goodenkoff, and I'm here with Killer Kara Ruda and Killer Kimberly Bell, and of course, our guest, Killer Megan. And we are so excited to have Megan Miranda here with us today. We have so much to talk about. So if you are here joining us, and my goodness, we are already filling up with comments. So yes, you know the drill. Drop your comments and questions in the chat box, and we will do our best to get through them. And hopefully we can ask as many as we can, and you can get your questions answered. So if you haven't already joined the Killer Author Club and are watching on maybe one of our Facebook pages, make sure you check out the Killer Author Club, our public page. And that's where we talk about killing all day long. Everybody is welcome. So please join us. But, for the really, really hardcore killers, you have to come find us at the Killer Author Clubhouse on Facebook. It's a very private, very exclusive group. We only let the most dedicated killers in. And that's where we're going to have our book clubs. And our first book club is coming on October 18th with the one and only Geneva Rose. And we'll be talking about her book, One of Us is Dead. You can find details and links at our website at killerauthor.com, along with the date for our November author, Samantha Downing, which so many of the folks in the Killer Author Club requested. And, you ask, the killers deliver. So we also want you to subscribe to our YouTube channel. I think we're up to 180 followers. So woohoo. And then follow us on all our social media accounts. We're on Instagram. We're on Facebook. I think we're on individually, we're on TikTok. I kind of dip my toe in once in a while and pull it back really fast. You want to cover all those social media bases, because we'll have links and information about the giveaway for our guest book tonight. And so for everything killer, please go to our killerauthor.com website as well. And so without further ado, Kara, can you please welcome our next guest here?
You know what? I can do that, Heather. All right, you guys. Tonight, obviously, we have Killer Megan Miranda in the clubhouse, and we're so happy to have you, Megan. A little bit about her. She is a New York Times bestselling author of All the Missing Girls, The Perfect Stranger, The Last House Guest, which was a Reese Witherspoon book club pick, The Girl from Widow Hills, and Such a Quiet Place. Her newest thriller, The Last to Vanish, was published this summer. She has also written several books for young adults. She grew up in New Jersey, graduated from MIT, and lives in North Carolina with her husband and 2 children. So welcome, Megan. We're so happy you're here. Can you give us the elevator pitch for The Last to Vanish?
Definitely. Thank you so much for having me. This is so fun. And thank you everyone for joining. So The Last to Vanish is about this small mountain resort town in North Carolina with a very mysterious history. So over the last 25 years, 7 visitors to the area have disappeared without a trace. Most recently, a journalist who was staying at the local inn investigating this string of disappearances, who then also disappears. And as the local sheriff says, at this point, this is like really bad optics. But this does really not deter anyone from coming to the town. It's earned it the reputation as like the most dangerous town in North Carolina. but this does not act as a deterrent. Instead, it kind of like makes people want to come to see if they can be the ones to uncover what really happened. And the book is narrated by a woman named Abby, who manages this local inn where the journalist was last seen. And she has kind of a unique perspective because she's not quite insider, not quite outsider. She has lived there for 10 years and she loves this place. She thinks of it like her home, but she also knows she's not quite seen as fully an insider, like the people who have like families generations gone back. And so when the journalist brother shows up looking for answers, she finds herself sort of drawn into this mystery of the secrets hidden under the surface of this place she calls home.
Very good. Very well done. And I can't wait to talk about it more in just a little bit. Kimberly, first, will you introduce this episode's killer cocktail?
Of course. So Megan's cocktail is kind of like the way I make cocktails. And I actually like this bottle too because it has a twist top, which is basically how I choose my wine when I'm looking in the wine fridge. I can just like twist that guy off and pour. So Megan, tell us about your cocktail skills.
Yes. So when you guys said, do you have a cocktail in mind that would go with the theme of this book? I was like, oh no, I am not like, I'm a wine drinker. I don't really drink a lot of different cocktails. So I was trying to think of something that was, really would go with like the North Carolina mountain setting. But the more I thought about it, the more I was like, no, I think bottles of wine go perfectly with this book because it's set like the inn, which is called the Passage Inn, where Abby works. They have this like nightly happy hour and they invite everyone from the community and all of their guests to kind of like mingle with one another. And they serve these bottles of wine that have like the label for their inn on it. And at night, at the end of the night, some of these bottles tend to go missing, which is like a plot point of the book as well. And I also like have a bottle with me that also has a screw top that kind of matches the one that was in the picture. So I feel like everything is just meant to be tonight.
Yeah, it's very circular. I love it. I love it. Well, there you go. Well, cheers.
Cheers. Oh, so much fun. So now we are at the section of our show where we do have some questions for you, Megan. And one of the most important ones, of course, is our killer question of the week. We know that The Last to Vanish is gripping and propulsive, and it's a thriller that opens up with the disappearance of a journalist, and it got a starred review from Publishers Weekly. They called the novel superb. Miranda is writing at the top of her game. Congratulations. That is such high praise. We all love the book, but we do have this question for you. So tell us, what's it like to kill? And we know that is fictional, of course, in your writing, but tell us what it's like when you sit down during the day to start writing and you have to kill off a few characters.
Yeah. So I actually am fascinated by this question, especially as a thriller writer, because I don't know about you guys, but I like really circle around this for a long time and become very attached to my characters and really don't want to do it. And so there'll always be these things in my mind that I know have to happen. And I kind of write my way around them and get closer and closer and closer to them. And then eventually I'm like, okay, no, like this is, what's right for the story. And this is what has to happen. And it's what sets everything in motion. And usually I think a lot of my, killings / disappearances are a little bit mysterious where you don't see it on the page and you're not really sure, whether these are disappearances, whether these are accidents, whether these are crimes. And a lot of the story is kind of about figuring out, what actually happened, not only who did it, but what. And I'm really I like this idea of how the characters to me are what I come up with before the plot. And so because of that, I kind of let the characters lead the way in the story, which is, I think, why also it's hard then to come to the point where you have to say goodbye to certain characters in your story, even if, it was before the story even happened. You kind of you get to know their stories in your head. Do you find that too?
Oh, yeah. Yeah, absolutely. Yeah. You live with them for so long that you're as you get to know them, you're like, does this one really need to go? You really need to get rid of them.
Yeah.
And one of the things I loved about this book is how you organized it. So you had each section was featured another missing person disappearance.
Yeah, I love that. Like the
How did
history.
you do that? Yeah. How did you decide to write it that way?
Yeah,
What
thank
was
you.
your thinking? Yeah.
So I love the way, like, I'm very, very interested in the way stories are told, both in television and movies and books. And I think, like, you can tell stories so many different ways and they reveal something different each time based on who the narrator is or the structure. And I try to kind of do something different with each of my stories and thinking about what's the right way to tell the story. And because there were 7 disappearances, I knew there was like so much information to kind of, give about the backstory. And I figured at the start, I said, I'm going to start with the most recent one because that's what's kicking it off. And so I started with that missing notice for the journalist and started writing my way into the story, and then realized that I could kind of structure my book like this, almost like it's a trail itself. And so as Abby is learning more about what happened to the journalist, Landon West, she then finds a piece of information that leads her to information about the next disappearance. And that's part 2. And it gets to the one that happened right before. So even though the story moves forward, it's kind of partitioned by each missing person's case. And then you kind of learn how they may or may not be linked along the way. So my working title for this book, when I first started it, was called The Vanishing Trail, because that was what the visitors called this trail behind the inn that led to the Appalachian where people went missing. And so then I thought to myself, okay, this whole book can kind of work as a trail in that same way. And even though it's not kind of explicit, that was kind of my hidden meaning behind the structure of the book.
So clever. So clever.
Yeah, that is super clever. So is that something that comes later, or here's, where did it go? Megan asked kind of a similar question. Do you plot your books, or is this something that you figure out like as you're writing or at the end during revisions? Like, how does that work?
All of the above is my answer to that question. So I am not a plotter. I'm very jealous of people who can see like the whole book at the start. I really have to write my way into stories and get to know who my characters are first. So I usually have the idea for a premise and a character, and so much of whether I feel like I get the first draft close on the first time is whether like I have the right structure for it. This book, I feel like I saw pretty early on the right structure for it, but there are books, The Last House Guest, I wrote 4 complete different ways before figuring out the right way to tell it, because I just didn't have the right structure for it. So I wish I could see things up front. I do plot as I go. Like I have Excel spreadsheets and I'm like making notes. Like if I start and I can see the turning point at like 50 pages, I think, okay, I can keep going. And then if I get to 50 pages and I can see like the halfway point, then I can keep going. What about you guys? I feel like it's fascinating because we all write similar types of books and like everyone has a different process, but we all get to the same place at the end.
Eventually. After development.
Are you plotters or?
I'm the only plotter here. These 2 are very much like sit down and write. I mean, I'm sure they know the premise, but but I am the obsessive compulsive, maybe a little OCD plotter.
I feel like you either do the work at the start with the plotting or you do the work in the revision when you're like, oh,
well,
I figured it out.
That's it. I know that if I sat down and just started writing, I would write myself into so many corners and then I would not see the forest for the trees. And it's happened to me before when I've thought, well, I'm going to try it this way. And it was such a spectacular, mess that I was like, never again. I'm just going to take time. But since we're talking about structure, and I know we're here to talk about your latest book, but I have to ask you about All the Missing Girls, because if you guys don't know that book, that was how I discovered you. I read that book, and basically it goes backwards, which I read it like first for the story, and then I went back and I was like, how the heck did she do this? Because who tells the story backwards? Like, how did you think of that?
So that was one where the structure was the original idea in a way. It was my first book for adults. And so it wasn't a book I had under contract. It wasn't a book that anyone knew I was writing. So it was sort of my passion project on the side that I kept coming back to. I was writing young adult at the time. And I just had this idea of telling a story in a reverse as a way to explore like the character motivation, and that each day you move back in time, you strip away another layer of like why something happened, and it gives you like a new piece or a new perspective. And I started the book and I got 50 pages in and I was like, okay, it's just not working. Put it aside, was writing the book under contract, came back to it. I mean, I kept coming back to it like project after project, where like the characters were like so deeply a part of me at that point that when I finished that first draft, it was one of like the highlights of my career, like being alone in my living room, kind of reaching the end of this story that had lived in my head for so long. But I did write it in the order that it's read. So it was very much an evolving draft. A lot of revision, but I wanted it to be read that way because I wanted you to get to know the characters that way. So it was, it was a passion project for me.
Yeah. And you know, it's funny that you bring that up because I was just on a writer's retreat with my Young Rich Widow fellow co-authors, and we were talking about like those passion projects because Vanessa is going to be coming out with a new book in, I think she said September of next year. And this was kind of like her passion project. And, you know, it's interesting. Sometimes those books come along and they just like kind of take us by surprise. And it turns out to be this big turning point in your career, right? Because you switched from young adult to thrillers. And I think somebody asked that question too, like, what made you want to make that switch? I can't find it back, but
I can't find it either. I was trying to find it. We saw your question.
You know, yeah. And so what, like, was it that story or was it something else that made you want to? There we go.
There we go.
Yeah. No, that's a great question. And, you know, I don't approach the stories differently. I think the process of writing the young adult stories in a way gave rise to the adult stories because they are about their suspense, they're thrillers. They're about these huge things that happen when characters are 17 or 18 years old. And at the end of the story, I would kind of, okay, we've reached a resolution. But years later, I would like those stories the characters come back to and you're like, I wonder how they're doing. Like, so I feel like all of my adult thrillers have this element of how the past impacts the present. Usually they have to do with things that happened in the past to these characters and whether they embrace these pasts or try to leave them behind or like, does the past catch up with them? Dun, dun, dun. And so All the Missing Girls, I didn't know was an adult book when I started writing it. I knew the story of what happened when these characters were teenagers. And I got that first time I got about 50 pages in, I thought to myself, this is missing an element of hindsight. Oh, this is a story of looking back at that time and going back into the past for answers and like having that thematically kind of pull it all together. And then I was like, oh, it's an adult book because the characters are 28 and not 18. I really do think about it more like what's the right, like who's the character, and that kind of determines what the story is. Yeah.
And have you written more YA, or is this your new place and you're sticking to it?
I mean, I do think this is my new place for now. When I wrote All the Missing Girls, I did write 2 more young adult books after that. I was writing both kind of one at a time, back and forth. But now I feel like I'm gravitated towards this direction. But I do think those themes from that time kind of have pulled forward too.
Yeah, I kind of agree too. I was writing women's fiction when Best Day Ever kind of popped into my head, and it just took a whole different direction. My agents were like, "No," I'm like, "Yes." It was kind of a passion project because she had no idea that I was writing it, and I had to write it. It just had to come out. So, yeah, it's fun when that happens.
I feel like there's something about that though, like it's speaking to you, and you can't let that story go. And yes, I agree.
It's meant to be told.
It's so fun.
Yeah. Awesome.
I love it. Here's one. Are any of your stories based on real life events that happened to you or someone you know?
Ooh, I would say they're not based on real life events or people I know. They're often inspired by like little tiny things that then lead to like, oh, what if this or what if that? So
Mhm.
probably the closest one that's based on like a news stories is probably The Girl from Widow Hills, which is about a girl who was the center of a huge news story when she was growing up. When she was 6 years old, she was swept away in a storm while she was sleepwalking and became this like news sensation as they searched for her. She was called The Girl from Widow Hills, and she was rescued 2 days later. And I'd been kind of had this idea in the back of my mind for a while. And I remember watching like the Thai cave rescue at this time and like that feeling when they were found and how invested I was as like somebody watching from far away. And I remember the moment they were found and I started thinking to myself, okay, what if there's a story where the people at the center of it didn't want to be part of the story? And it's totally different, but they're kind of like inspired by, things you're seeing on the news or hearing about. The Last to Vanish, my kids, I'm in North Carolina, and my kids would take field trips to Charleston and go on ghost tours. And they'd come home telling me about these historical ghost tours. And I remember thinking, like, I wonder if there was a town that had a notorious history, but what if that history wasn't that long ago? And what if that history was still happening? And like, what if the town embraced that history? And that's kind of what gave rise to this book instead.
Mhm.
You guys find that? Or do you base them on like real things or just bits and pieces that take on a life of their own?
Yeah, I'd
All
say,
of the above.
yeah, bits and pieces for me. It's like you, something will really grab my attention from the news or
Mhm.
Yeah.
come across my way, and then I take it in its own direction.
You're kind of like ripped from the headlines. Don't you like pull stuff that's going on in Iowa? Or,
Yeah, yeah, all over. I do some rip from the headlines.
You do. I just
yeah, Kara too. Now, especially Kara's like, I'll just
Yeah.
write about. Talk about
That's
writing what you know.
true. Okay. Yeah. So the New York Post just did this story that my next book is supposedly based on true story. I'm like, no, it's not.
I think the headline was ex-rep's wife writes a story
about a cheating congressman whose wife murders him.
And thank God the picture that they used in it was them kissing, because otherwise it would be.
I know, but the reporter's like, come on, tell me the truth. Did he have an affair? I'm like, no, he did not have an affair. And then he called Harley and asked him, are you happily married? I'm like, what? Oh my gosh. I was so worried when that story was coming out. Like, what are they going to do? Yeah. Oh boy. But anyway, that's my only like real rip from the headlines thing. Yeah. It's the headlines ripping from my book. Which is odd. So it was like a reverse headline thing.
Yeah.
But, yeah. Oh my gosh. Okay.
We're
all right,
fiction
guys.
writers.
Right. We're fiction. It's fiction, people. I know. He did. He's like, come on, you can tell me. I'm like, oh, I'm going to tell you, New York Post guy. Okay. Anyway. Yeah. All right, you guys, I think it's time for our next segment. And this is everyone's favorite segment. Am I right? I think I am. Okay. Yes. Okay. Megan is giving away 2 signed copies of The Last to Vanish. All you have to do is answer this question about our killer guest, and we'll pick the correct answer within the next 24 hours. Bonus points for joining the club and subscribing to our YouTube channel, which since we started has now added 1 more person. So thank you, whoever you are. We're up to 181. Okay. The question is, where did Megan, a very smart woman, go to college? All right. And 2 signed copies, guys. So put your question or your answers in the comments, and no cheating and looking at everybody else's answers.
Or you can just cheat and look at everybody.
Well, yeah, I guess you can.
Make sure to choose the right one.
I feel compelled to say that. Okay. All right, Kimberly.
Yes. So the killers love our indie booksellers. And so every week or every episode, as you know, we ask our guests to choose their favorite. And Megan has selected Main Street Books in Davidson, North Carolina. Megan, tell us what you love about Main Street Books.
Oh, I'm so lucky to have this bookstore in my hometown. They are wonderful, and it's such a bonus that they're so close by to me. So the wonderful thing, like I've been able to partner with them for many of my recent launches. And, you know, when we were scheduled to have the launch for The Girl from Widow Hills in 2020, they pivoted and were like, we will figure out how to do this. And we did it virtually and we're able to ship all the books. And then in 2021, for Such a Quiet Place, they were like, we will do hybrid. And they've just been like fantastic at figuring out like creative ways that we're still able to, you know, work together and get books signed to people. And they partner with me now that anytime people want a signed book, they can order through the store and I just hop over. It's like right around the corner. So they're just a fantastic part of the town, wonderful part of the community, and so lucky to have them there.
Love it. Well, I just dropped the link in the comments, so show Megan some books some love. Find that comment and head on over there. They will ship it to you.
Yeah, signed copies. Yeah, if you don't win one of the two, like if, for example, you pick Duke.
Now another fun segment. We have our Killer Swag winners. Everybody has its privileges. So every episode we choose a name from the Killer Author Clubhouse to win pieces of Killer Author Club swag. T-shirts, mugs, phone cases, hats, all of which can be found at thekillerauthorclub.com. Tonight, we not only have one, but two lucky winners going home with the tote bag. And the winners are Leslie Kagan and Tammy Yakabak Giuliano. And so please, winners, contact one of the killers and we will make sure we send those along the way.
Yay! Congrats.
Congrats to you guys. Thanks for being in the clubhouse. It's very
great.
So much.
Okay, and now we have our brand new segment, Ask a Killer. This is your chance to put us in the hot seat and ask us the tough questions. So anybody can ask anything of all four of us.
It can be about books. It can be about anything. And if there's not going to be one popping up, I do have a question for Kara. Her face. And I bet you everybody else is thinking this too. I want to know what you do with your hair. What is your hair care?
My hair care?
You have great hair.
Are you kidding? Really?
I really want to know.
Well, okay. Yeah, no, I mean, I think I'm just lucky really, because I just have a lot of hair. The only problem is it takes a really long time to do it. So that's the only downside. But once I do it, then it shapes up.
Do you
pretty well.
use special products or is it just wash and go?
Oh no, it's not wash and go, because if I washed and didn't dry and go, I would have my hair's really curly. So it would be like up to here, you guys. Like it's fine and curly. So like if it gets wet, it's just, I call it clown hair. So I have
the same stuff. Same.
Yeah. So it's really about heat, I think, to control it. Yeah. Yeah. See, I would never know that about you either. So there you go. Now you guys know.
Ask us anything.
Secretly curly hair ladies. Yeah.
Oh, here's one. I guess for anybody. What was your favorite vacation? Oh my gosh. I know Kara and Kimberly have some good ones for that.
Megan, answer.
I'd say I've been to Costa Rica twice, and I think that was our favorite family trip. Like everyone in my family loved it. My parents, my kids. So that's one. Is
that where they say Pura Vida? Is that Pura
Vida? Yeah. Did you climb the volcano and all that?
We did that one of the times we did the volcano trip. Yeah. Really cool to be able to kind of see all different types of things. Yeah.
That's funny.
This was funny. I picked this one, but the one right after it was, have any of you ever been arrested? But we'll stick with what's your guilty food pleasure. Okay, Heather, what's your guilty food pleasure?
Oh my goodness. My guilty food pleasure. You know, I love nachos. I do. I love nachos. I could eat it every day. Nachos, pizza, all the good stuff.
So yeah, I like anything covered with cheese as well.
Yeah. Cheese.
Yeah.
See, and I'm the sweet person. I want like the, Publix cake, the really dirty kind made with like lard and sugar and those big colorful icing roses. That's my
No. Oh my gosh, really?
really.
Yeah.
Megan,
What about you, Megan?
Macaroni and cheese, like 3 meals a day. Like I will.
Do you
eat
make it?
cold.
Do you make it like from scratch?
Oh, I do not. And like Kraft macaroni and cheese is like my comfort food. Like, yes, since I was a child. Like
it
that.
has such a specifically orange color too, you know?
When I was pregnant, I craved that stuff. And I was living overseas at the time and it cost like, I don't know, $7 a box. And I would just like, it was so good.
Oh, that's hilarious. Oh my gosh. Okay, I think that's okay. Oh, a lot of Kraft mac and cheese lovers
in here.
That's good.
I've never been arrested, but I do have tattoos.
I have not been arrested either. Either of you guys? Okay. Okay. So
No,
no
never
arrest.
been arrested. No
Never been-
tattoos.
Yeah, no tattoos either. Boring. I have like kids with tattoos, so that kind of
Me too.
Yeah, that counts. Yeah.
makes me cool. Yeah.
It's that generation. Okay.
Yeah. So you must be young. Kimberly.
Funny. All right. So we are coming up. Oh, it's already 9:30. So I do want to do another quick plug for the book club. We have Geneva Rose coming up next week, 1 week from tonight, same time. Not the same place. This is happening in the Killer Author Clubhouse. That's our private group on Facebook. So you do have to be a member. And we're holding it there because we're going to have tons of spoilers. So read it all the way through to the end and then pop in with your burning questions. I was thinking maybe we could have a couple of Clubhouse members pop in and ask their questions in person as well. So watch for that announcement tomorrow. I'll be putting it up in the Clubhouse, and then you can start, putting your questions in the comments. And if you want to be one of those readers who pops in and is on camera to ask your question, put that in the comments as well. But again, that'll all be in tomorrow's announcement in the Killer Author Clubhouse. So that's that. And Megan, at the end of every episode, we send you home with, ta-da! You can print it out, hang it on your wall, stick it to your forehead, however you would like to display that
in your wallet.
badge. You
Thank
have
you.
earned it
We'll
tonight.
carry it proudly. Yes.
Yes, you survived so far. We're not finished yet, but you did so far survive. Yes.
So
my
far,
God.
so good.
So far, so good. Okay, you guys. And our next guest is a New York Times best-selling author whose books are published in 26 languages and have been voted Best of the Year or top picks by the Today Show, Good Morning America, Entertainment Weekly, and others. Her latest is deemed A Deliciously Tense Ride by Ruth Ware. It's a chilling locked room thriller about 3 couples who rent a luxury cabin in the woods. I loved it, and you will too. So join us Tuesday, October 25th at 9 p.m. Eastern, 6 p.m. Pacific. And in the meantime, go shopping at killerauthorclub.com. Thank you, Killer Megan, for being here with us. And remember, follow us all on Facebook and go get The Last to Vanish at Main Street Books. Thanks for being here, everybody. Have a good night.
Thank you so much for having me. It's so fun.
I guess I'm a killer through our love and